Hi and welcome to Immersion. In this session I'm very excited to be talking with Quinn of Quinnovation about social collaboration and learning. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Karen Moloney and I'm the Community Director of the eLearning Experts and your host for this session. So while our guest speaker is waiting patiently in the wings of a virtual stage, for those of you not familiar with his work, I'll just give you a bit of background. Quinn provides strategic learning technology solutions to Fortune 500, government, not-for-profit and education. An internationally known consultant, speaker and author of 4 books, as well as numerous articles and chapters, he integrates a deep understanding of thinking and learning with broad experience in technology to improve organisational execution, innovation and ultimately performance. Clark works on behalf of clients through his business Quinnovation. So I'd like to say hi Clark, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Karen, and hello, everybody who ends up listening to this. Good day. Nice to be with you.
Okay, so to kick us off, why do you think social learning is such a hot topic at the moment when working together in group learning activities is not a new thing?
I think a couple things are driving it, Karen. The first one is the use of social media has blossomed, in the personal life. People are on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter, and they're all over the place, and they're seeing real value in it.
Okay.
And so they're beginning to say, what does this mean for organizations? Can this be something I can tap into? And the organizations are realizing that the source of continuing innovation, the optimal execution is no longer sufficient these days. We need to have continuing innovation, and that comes from people, the creative friction of people working together to create new ideas. It's not individual innovation, it's not optimal execution. Optimal execution is just the cost of entry. The continual innovation is going to come from people working together. So there's a driver that says businesses, we need this. And there's people going, I find value in this, how can I tap into it for work? I think that those converging factors explain why the time is right for using social media to accelerate businesses.
Okay. Yeah, I think certainly, I've definitely seen, I suppose even this interview is an example of that. I think we have the ability to reach out and touch a lot more people, so that the ability to collaborate is a lot easier than it ever was before.
And the saying is, you're no longer just what's in your head. Your value to the organization is also who's in your network.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if organisation is thinking about embracing social learning, because I would imagine a lot of people listening to this are kind of, maybe thinking about dipping a toe in the water or just doing some investigation, getting that business case across the line is never an easy one. So can you outline for me what the benefits are for organisations that can embrace and want to embrace social learning?
Sure. And we should get out of the way, the fear. Oh, people are just going to use it for, talking about parties or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they would do that whether they had social media or not. If your organization isn't giving people meaningful purpose, you're not going to get the benefits. But when you do, there are tangible benefits. As I was saying, the continual innovation, that creative spark of people working together, and increasingly we're seeing proposals for new models of organizational working, and it's coming from the military. Stan McChrystal's book on teams of teams, business research, Amy Edmondson and her book on teaming, Dave Gray's book about the future organizations, a connected company, are all positing getting smaller teams working together to accomplish things. And the way they do that is through communication, and they don't have to be co-located. So innovation is one of the primary ones, but there's ancillary benefits. When you reorganize to enable, to facilitate the interactions that give you social learning, you increase engagement. You find new focus that's going to make people committed to their work, and that has ongoing benefits of their commitment to the work, their desire to accelerate, their desire to continually develop. So it's also a mechanism for, well, put it another way, you think about the explicit knowledge that people are beginning to worry is walking out the door, but when people are sharing it through social media, it gets captured implicitly. And that knowledge is exchanged and becomes available across the organization. And so the organization can learn faster. And that is the critical element to organizational success going forward.
Definitely. I think it's certainly the way that the business is moving these days. So, I mean, as we all know, standards for learning design and delivery can vary across all fields, from instructor-led training to e-learning and beyond. So can you highlight for me what you consider constitutes good social learning?
Sure. And it's not, grafting on a discussion board onto your LMS. I mean, that's not a bad thing to do. But
it's useful, but it's not the thing.
Yeah, that's necessary but not sufficient, okay? So really, you should be using the enterprise social tools that you want people to be using outside of social learning. So to be clear, there's both formal and informal social learning. Social learning can and should be part of formal learning. It should be wrapped around courses. There should be discussions ongoing. Learning it should be spaced out. This event model doesn't work. It doesn't align with how our brains work. So we should be interacting and negotiating shared understandings as we do formal learning. But that carries over into ongoing learning of the individual and the organization. And this requires several things. The way you get the best value out of it is to not just tolerate, but value diversity. You've absolutely got to say, we want differing viewpoints. We know the evidence is that if we have different types of people working together to solve problems, the solution is better than if they're all the same. Mm-hmm. We absolutely have to be open to new ideas. People have to be willing to listen to new ideas and not attack the person, because for introducing it or for saying something that's not how we do it here. You need time for reflection, and that's hard for organizations who are under continual pressures to produce more, somewhat short-sightedly. We know that if you give time for reflection, you take that out of your day, so you're spending less time doing the job, but you spend that gap doing time for reflection, the total output is higher than if you spent that whole time working. And your organization say, we don't have time for reflection. Okay, we don't have time to work better.
Let's just keep going.
And the most important one is psychological safety. It has to be safe to contribute. If people don't feel safe, don't feel to speak up, if they're in the U.S. we have what we call the Miranda organization, where anything you say can and will be held against you.
Yeah.
Like a legal restrictor. And so good social learning is people sharing their work, working out loud, commenting on each other's work, asking for help in ways that will get help, offering help in ways that will be accepted, collaborating together in a spirit to contribute. Good social learning. And don't assume, and one of the big things we have is we assume that people know how to work and play well together, and it's not the case. And so good social learning is also facilitated. Somebody is there helping people develop the skills, being explicit about the skills and facilitating it, and requiring people, making it safe to experiment and try new things and fail. These are all components that are essential to making social learning, to really taking advantage of what social learning has to offer.
Yep, absolutely. Throughout your career, you've no doubt seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to introducing social learning into organisations. So of those ugly case studies, are there common reasons for failure, or are they sort of specific to the organisations and the circumstances surrounding the implementation?
No, there are principled reasons why these efforts fail, and they allude, the flip side of the number of those elements I was talking about for good social learning can lead to the death of social learning. If you put in an enterprise social network or some social media tool and nobody uses it, it's pretty clear that it's not safe to share. You've got something wrong with your culture. And you want to find ways, so it fails because people just put it in and don't evangelize it and don't reward it. The standard organizational change literature is so critical, and yet it's amazing how often people just fail to do it. It's also going to fail if it's dictated from above and yet the leaders don't practice it. The people who are, insisting, and if it's in a small team that's deciding to do it, that leader still has to be walking the walk. They have to be sharing themselves and commenting and admitting mistakes. So you've got to walk the walk, and can't just graft it in. And a colleague says, pave the deer trails. Go where they already are and start small, get it working one place, and then grow it and expand it. Don't try and do it enterprise-wide. 70% chance of failure is the enterprise-wide change initiatives. So you really have to nurture it, expect people to struggle, give them support for the problems you anticipate, have a SWAT team ready to deal with the problems that you didn't anticipate but expect that there will
There'll always be some of those, yeah.
Exactly. Reward the behavior you're looking for, and it's been known that you have to go out and find the opinion makers, and you may have to sort of artificially induce them or prod them to participate, and you absolutely have to address those factors, making it safe, making it truly, diversity truly valued. Really have to check people, check that you are open to new ideas. You need these elements, and it's complex, and it takes time. One of the biggest social learning things is, oh, well, we've put it in. Why isn't it working right away? And have a purpose. Know what you're looking for. Know what you want as metrics and outcomes, and measure it. So really do it. It fails because we don't treat it as a systematic intervention, and we have a lot of expectations and myths about it, and we really have to know what we're doing.
Yeah. I think it's something that we're guilty of in the industry as well. As kind of like the reason I asked you the question at the beginning about it being the hot potato at the moment. It seems like we're always chasing the shiny thing that's going to be the answer to all of our problems, and that's going to get us into the good books with the business. So let's do some social learning. Okay, let's go and do that, and then nobody really thinks about the bigger, wider picture.
Yeah, the nurturing is remarkably detailed in going out, and the way you talk and how you share, and being some other cultural elements, being very positive, I'm having the positive deviant type of thing, and appreciative inquiry, always looking to find what's the lesson to be learned here. And I love the story I heard in one little organization that it's got to be safe to fail, but you don't want to celebrate the failure. And they rang a bell not when the failure was made, but when the lesson was learned, and they shared the lesson, and that made it okay to fail. Not a stupid, not the same mistake.
Yeah.
But if you shared the learning, nobody had to make the same mistake, and that made it okay. And I thought that was just a really nice encapsulation of a spirit that's really key to not failing.
Absolutely. And I suppose some of what we've talked about already kind of leads into this next question, but I'm saying if we're looking to work and learn more socially, is there a danger that the non-social portion of that workforce could miss out, i.e. so in a face-to-face situation you have your introverts, and online you have your lurkers, and then I suppose that feeds into the more complex issue around organisational culture rather than just learning, which we have already touched upon. But is there a danger that, if not done correctly, the introverts could miss out and get left behind?
I'll say no, and let me tell you why. And I'm afraid it's going to show my age, but which is woeful as it is. When I was an undergraduate, I discovered the connection between computers and learning, and we didn't have any degree in that, but we had the ability to create our own degrees, but you had to do a project. And so I found a couple of professors who were very early on in using computer support learning. And we used email to conduct, they were doing an experiment to conduct email using classroom discussion, and I participated in that. And we found a really interesting thing. People who were introverts in classroom, some of them blossomed in online, and some of the ones who'd been very extroverted in face-to-face weren't particularly participatory online.
Okay.
So it's different channels, and having more different channels is good. Now, lurking is the legitimate participation. If you're watching and learning and don't, and eventually if you make it safe and people have a need, they will eventually come out when they need to and when it's right for them.
Okay.
But you want to get the culture right, and then lurking is a way to learn, but you do want to encourage them to start contributing, commenting, and as a habit, as you buy into why it's important, and you start doing it and it becomes safe, you need to experiment a little bit, and then they can come out. Not everybody's going to participate the same, but one of the great values in Jane Bozarth's Scholar book, Show Your Work, and that principle of working out loud or showing your work will naturally mean people are in the natural requirements that their work is done through digital technology that make it visible appropriately,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily throughout the whole organization. There may be times you need to do things in a small team first, but there will be others seeing what you're doing. And so whether you're contributing on them or not, your work will be visible, and that begins to break down these barriers.
And I think that's probably part of where the fear comes from with organisations. A lot of this stuff, like we've traditionally been used to, having LMSs and happy sheets and reporting and seeing people at, learning events and things like that, whereas this kind of makes it a little bit more self-driven, and we don't have complete control over it, and we can't necessarily see what's going on for that lurker until it materializes in their work, which is a little bit more difficult to monitor, I suppose.
And you bring up such a wonderful issue that oh well, we can't manage it. You're crazy if you think you're managing all the learning that's happening in the organization. People are end running. There's a little thing called Google, and I think you're blocking that through the firewall. People have mobile devices with internet connectivity. You can't stop the signal.
No.
To quote one of my favorite movies. So and people have been sharing. The other thing, the flip side is they worry, they're going to share the wrong stuff. They're out at cocktail parties. They're, going to conferences. There's lots of ways and times, granted there's the digital trail that can be audited, which is slightly different, but you have social media policies already. You just need to map them
to learning.
To technology.
Yep, awesome. So through your study and work, you've gained a deep understanding of cognitive science, which I just find completely fascinating. I think this is incredibly important in our field, because if we understand more about cognition, then we can step outside of existing and sometimes outdated learning methodologies and practice to achieve better outcomes. This is obviously quite a deep topic we could talk about for the next several years, but are you able to share with us just some basic principles of cognition that can be applied in a social learning environment to improve the experience and the outcomes?
And first, let me say thank you for saying cognitive science, not neuroscience.
No, two different things.
It's appropriate, that term, and there's very little at the neuroscience level that applies to the types of topics we're talking about. And yes, cognitive science. There are some robust results, and some of them are cognitive science. Cognitive science includes sort of social psychology and the social sciences, as well as cognitive psychology. And yes. We do know that there are certain processes that even come from non-cognitive research about, for instance, brainstorming. People said there recently was a spate of research articles that said, well, not research articles, public media articles that said, oh, brainstorming doesn't work. And the problem is the model of brainstorming they had was broken, and those models don't work. It's not you bring people in a room, put the idea up, and start talking. That doesn't work. What you need to do is get everybody to think on the idea on their own, whether they do it before they come in or you give them time. But everybody needs to have time to process on their own before they start sharing, because otherwise their thinking will be constrained by the first thing they hear. So it has to do with the priming effect cognitively is the things you hear will bias what you consequently are likely to think about. And so you need a chance to, and that's where, again, where the diversity helps. We know that evenness of turn taking and emotional awareness of the groups working together, the higher the emotional awareness and the more even the turn taking, the better the outcomes. And just there's a number of specific processes and practices that lead to the best outcomes that we're supposed to, that if we know, we can better optimize what we're trying to achieve and what we get out of investing in social learning.
Okay. So these events and what we're trying to do with this community is all about the doing. So while I appreciate, obviously, there's need for strategy and planning, I'm a big planner. I think our industry often gets paralysed by theory and methodology, and we're missing out on the valuable learnings that come from just doing it and working out loud. So what can people do now to start the ball rolling with social learning in their organisations that won't require a 3-month business case or a multi-million-dollar budget?
Well, I suggest, and I'm going to make a small assumption that the audience here is largely involved in L&D in some way.
Yes.
And what we've seen is that some of the last people to adopt social media in an organization are the L&D group. And like the lottery, you got to be in it to win it.
Yeah.
You have to use. I didn't get Twitter, but I got on it very early because two people who I knew and thought well of said, we're on Twitter, you should get on here. And that was enough, and I got in it, and I processed it and began to find value. You have to use these tools to really understand what they add. And you want to start small. You really should focus first on your own team. And I really do think, one of the diagrams we use is the coherent organization, and the teams are formed from people from different communities of practice. That's where the diversity plays a role. And then they feed back out to their communities, and those communities are tapping in, to the broader community. So there's not just the community within the organization, but the community practitioners outside the organization. Mm-hmm. The people who are listening to this, who are attending your event, yep, are connecting to their colleagues in this community of practice. We call it, learning inside and outside the organization. And then they go to the broader network and look at related fields. Well, it makes sense to start with a small group and start using the tools to start working out loud, to start communicating, collaborating. Get away from email. Start using collaborative documents and stop sending around the Microsoft file to everybody and then trying to figure out how to resolve all the different versions. Use a collaborative document. Work out loud, share. Do it internally and get your culture right. Understand what it takes and realize it's going to be hard, but start making sure that you are valuing diversity, open to new ideas, creating time for reflection, and making it safe to contribute. Mm-hmm. Figure out how to make that work, and that starts small, and then evangelize that. Live it, walk it, evangelize it, and find a small team to pilot with again, and grow both to other teams and from the teams out to the community. So once you start realizing how you work with these tools to solve problems, take it back out to the community and start showing how you use these tools to document and refine and continually improve the community's practices. And you move from a community of practice to a community of improvement. So you're always looking to continue. So it's making the tools, the explicit working out loud, part of your practices, and making your culture conducive, and doing that from your own group and out to small groups and grow it through the organization. There's a book by Sutton and Rao called Scaling Excellence that talks about this is the way you get change to happen. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. There's a couple of things I picked up on that you were saying there. Well, firstly, the reason this event is happening now, it was supposed to happen towards the end of this year. But after being on a Twitter chat with a few people globally a couple of months ago, I realized the need for this was now. So we kind of have reprioritized and pulled that forward so that we can help, the community and bring them what they need. And the other thing is about getting into social media. There are still, it's interesting when I go to these different sort of places online and groups I'm part of, and think it tends to be the same kind of crowd of people. I think there's still an awful lot of people who are not in that space and don't see it as of value to their work yet. So we need to get them on board.
It is tragically true that, so I've got the book out, Revolutionize Learning and Development, that's talking about these directions. There's several other books that are beginning to unearth this, but the evidence is from, ATD in the States and CPD and Towards Maturity in the UK, that L&D is really lagging. We're still offering courses and measuring how much does it cost to put a bum in a seat for an hour as our only benchmark. And as you mentioned, smile sheets. There's this one small interesting fact about smile sheets is that people's opinion about the learning experience has zero correlation with the actual of it. Yeah. 0.09, that's zero with a rounding error. It's not helpful. So that we're measuring is another important step in trying to make improvement. But yeah, I agree. There's a crying need, and I'm glad you saw it, and I'm glad that helped. And I saw an impressive lineup of speakers. I recognized a number of the names you're going to have. And
yes, thank you.
more power to you.
That's what happens when you go online and build a network. Okay, so just to round up then, just for our listeners that are looking to delve a bit deeper into social learning, because obviously this is, there are so many different facets to this field, but what steps would you suggest that they take, or are there any particular resources that you would recommend as a start point?
Yes. So, actions, join attend a Twitter chat. Learn Chat is Thursday evenings. That's one of that's arguably the original Learning Twitter chat. There's Chat to Learn, which is, so it's evening U.S. time, which means I think it's morning Australia time. At any rate, we get a couple early Antipodeans, Kiwis, and Aussies. And the other one is in the morning U.S. time, and that tends to catch the UK people. But try out a Twitter chat. Join some of the LinkedIn groups that talk about learning. Be active. Then I've got an article on learning solutions about bridging social and informal, formal and informal social learning. That I can get you the URL if you care.
That would be great. Thank you.
Tony Bingham and Marsha Connors, The New Social Learning, is in its second edition. That's a great book. Jane Bozarth's Show Your Work, I mentioned. Jay Cross's Informal Learning, fabulous book. And, Jane Bozarth, not Jane Bozarth, the other evil Jane.
Jane Hart. Yes.
And her, talks about had her social learning field book and now modern workplace learning. Lots of places to get up on this and pay attention. And if I thought about it more, I would point to more.
Look, I think that's plenty to start with, and we can, for those that are listening, we can put all of those into the show notes underneath. But I think an important point to mention about the Twitter chat as well is that even if you can't participate live, a lot of people will maybe storyfy the chat, or you can just use the hashtag of the chat to go, to search back and look and read the discussion. So even if you can't participate real time, you can still see what was going on and get those insights and those conversations.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
So I just put the link in the chat for the article I wrote, and then there's a bunch of other links we can spread in any way that's appropriate for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, well, except it just went to orgs. It intended to go to all. Anyways.
I'll be able to pull that up. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for your time to chat with me today, Clark. So I really enjoyed hearing your views and advice on this topic. I could probably sit and talk to you days and days about this. And I'm sure everybody out there has really enjoyed it. So for anybody who wants to get in contact with Clark, you can follow him on Twitter via @Quinnovator, or you can reach him and follow his blog at the website at quinnovation.com.
I am the Quinnovator. Yes.
I love that. I think it's great.
I have a blog, learnits.com, as well, where lots of the thoughts that end up in presentations and things appear first. So
yeah, we can get to LearnLets from the website. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I'll make sure that I put a link in the show notes as well for people to pick that up.
No worries.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Good luck with your event, and
thank you.
Thanks to everybody.
So you can also find Clark's details listed on our website at the elearningexperts.com.au/immersion June 16. So thanks, Clark, and thanks to everybody for listening. And this is Karen Moloney signing off.